Overdrive this week, we check out how epic the 4th generation Maruti Suzuki Swift is and pit the newly launched Bajaj Pulsar N250 against the popular Hero Charisma XMR 210. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Soini Dutt. The 4th generation of the Maruti Suzuki Swift has entered the Indian market. It now comes with a new engine which is more fuel efficient than before and an automated manual transmission. Maruti Suzuki is calling this Swift an epic Swift. Is it though really? Let's find out.
It's pretty hot. It's the month of May. But speaking of which, May 2024 marks 19 years of the Maruti Suzuki Swift. In fact, since its global launch in 2005, Suzuki has sold about 6.5 million units of the Swift, out of which, unsurprisingly, a big chunk, 3 million units, have come from India alone, from Maruti Suzuki. And now in this month, they have launched the 4th generation of the Swift, and I'm pretty sure it's going to add about a million more to that tally. But calling it all new, that's a bit much.
For starters, it doesn't look very different than the outgoing car. But it certainly looks more angular now. Much like its counterpart, the Baleno, the latest iteration of the Swift adheres closely to its tried and tested hardtech platform with minor modifications here and there. The result is that the new car rolls on exactly the same wheelbase and track and has an identical width as well, despite the L-shaped DRLs trying hard to create an illusion of grandeur. Yes, it's marginally longer owing to some subtle tweaks to the bumpers. To the untrained eye, it may seem like deja vu, but the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice the nuanced alterations, particularly in the grille design.
They've decidedly reduced the ornamentation on the grille. Like, there's no chrome lining. Remember that chrome bar on the previous Swift? That is gone too. This is to improve the aerodynamic efficiency of the front end. To that effect, even the Suzuki logo, it sits flush with the bonnet, not upright on the grille.
At the rear, you will notice that they've traded some of that flair for user-friendliness. Gone are the C-pillar mounted door handles, replaced with a more traditional setup.
What that also means is that it's going to be much easier for kids to open the doors now. They don't really have to reach out. And to that effect, the car also sits a little lower. In fact, the ground clearance has dropped to 145 millimeters. So it also sits more squat, more closer to the ground. It's begging to be taken out for a spin. That is if you are an enthusiast. Move up to the higher trims and you get these 15-inch diamond cut wheels, shod with 185 section tires, which honestly are skinnier than the latte that most of the metropolitan target audience for the Swift enjoy every morning.
While the lower trims settle for the 14 inches, much like the spare wheels stored away under the boot floor. That, however, is a space saver.
Speaking of the boot, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Now, the overall cargo space, the volume, it all remains unchanged. So does the high loading lip of the vehicle. The aperture, not too bad. So loading a big suitcase in this is not going to feel like, cramming in a watermelon through a letterbox. But still, for a big suitcase, the space might still be inadequate. You might still have to drop one of the 60-40 split seats to make it more versatile to put your luggage in properly. Smaller bags though, shouldn't be a problem.
Once inside, you will notice that the rear seat space hasn't changed much. The contouring of the seats is flat, should be okay for 200 to 300 kilometer journeys. Anything longer might get cumbersome. The rear space is still good enough only for 2 adults and a kid.
Now, the high shoulder line that I mentioned about earlier, that also gives us a slightly higher window line. It's going to be a little tall, especially for shorter passengers. Kids is what I'm talking about, but it's not going to be as tall as, say, the 2nd generation of the Swift. And that missing C-pillar mounted door handle that I mentioned about, that sort of liberates more room, and you get this quarter glass now. That adds to the airier feel inside this cabin despite the all-black layout.
There is an abundance of stretchy plastics, but the dashboard boasts multiple textures and is surprisingly well assembled. The instrumentation is fresh for the Swift, but bears a striking resemblance to the other siblings like the Baleno. And speaking of similarities, the infotainment system now resides higher up on the dashboard without obstructing the view. Prepare your eardrums because the audio quality is top-notch for this price point, with the added touch of the Archemist tuning taking it up a notch. As for the front seats, they offer decent bolstering, although I must admit the cushions are a tad too soft for my liking. Nevertheless, they are generously proportioned and bonus points for the height adjustable driver's seat. And let's not forget the modern conveniences. A wireless charger accompanied by 3 USB ports for all your gadgetry needs. While the front cup holders have been upsized to accommodate even bulky protein shakers. But that said, I don't appreciate the skimpy door pockets, particularly in the rear.
Space for your knickknacks is going to be limited. Weirdly, you only get one seat pocket, that's behind the passenger seat, nothing behind the driver's seat. And even the door pockets, well, they'll only hold a small 500 ml bottle. A 1 litre bottle is going to be quite a bit of a squeeze there. You get AC vents, but no center armrest. But in terms of the safety, it scores pretty well. Like for example, you get adjustable headrest, but only on the either ends. You also get Isofix style seat mounts, and irrespective of what variant you choose, there are 6 airbags to secure the cabin.
Speaking of safety, here's a quick glance at everything the new Swift has to offer.
The big headline for the Swift is of course the new engine. It's a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder engine. So it's lost a cylinder. The GoPro is already shaking. Some of the other things, including the rearview mirror, is shaking a bit. That's the inherent nature of a 3-cylinder engine, right? You have that thummy note and you get those pedal vibrations. Of course, things smoothen out the moment you're past 1500 RPM, everything gets better. But under 1500 RPM, you can feel all those vibrations, and that's something that we didn't have with the 4-cylinder motor. So in terms of refinement at absolutely lower speeds or at idling, of course this is not feeling as refined. As the speeds rise, as the RPM rises, it's on par, so no complaints there. The other talking point is of course the power. It's down on power compared to the dual jet motor that we got with the previous generation Swift finally, and that shows in the acceleration figures.
In our tests, this new Z Series engine with the AMT hit not 200 km an hour in 15 odd seconds in the manual mode, a sluggish 18 seconds with the automatic mode, and dropped further to 20 seconds with the AC running.
What I'm trying to get at is, it doesn't feel as quick. It doesn't seem to have that outright power that you love with the outgoing Swift. Despite all the advancements that have happened in the AMT technology, there's still a fair bit of head nod, or that shift pause, or the pause between shifts that you will feel where your head literally moves. That's why we call it the head nod.
Despite its flaws, the AMT still offers the convenience of an automatic transmission, shifting gears for you. No fuss. And let's face it, people love convenience.
Let's now hop into the manual and see if that's any better.
So why did Suzuki opt for the 1.2 litre 3-cylinder engine when it's not exactly a speed demon? Well, it's all about going green. 12% lower CO2 emissions and a solid 10 to 14% bump in fuel economy, with the AMT being the more efficient one.
At highway speeds, and I'm barely doing about 110, there is a bit of that floaty feel that you even had with the previous generation Swift. So that's not really gone down too much. Even if the car is sitting lower, you still have a bit of that floaty feel.
The steering also remains fairly light at highway speeds, and while I would have liked it to weigh up, most people will like how convenient it feels while navigating the city streets. They claim to have improved the suspension too, especially at the rear, for better long-distance comfort. We'll agree with that claim, as the suspension also has a noticeably softer damping now, and I also like how the suspension is less noisy compared to the outgoing car. When it comes to cabin noise insulation, it's passable. Around 120 km an hour, expect some wind noise, particularly over the small mirrors, which honestly could use a bit more real estate. Honestly speaking, the new Swift is good, but it still leaves me wanting in more areas than one. As a commuter, I wanted a bigger wow factor in the cabin design, and as an enthusiast, I wanted better stability, more power, and a more engaging drive. I wanted the Swift to be a more economical alternative to the i20N line, and somewhere it falls short, but putting the price into perspective sorts some of those shortcomings.
So overall, the sum of all these enhancements doesn't really reflect all that much on the price tag. It's only gone up by a small margin. On your EMIs, it's not going to make that much of a difference.
So if you crave a bit of driving excitement without having to break the bank, the Swift is still the way to go in the premium hatchback space.
We've got a spec comparison for you in case you're wondering how the new Swift fares against its rivals. Do check that out on the Overdrive YouTube channel. We'll be back very shortly to tell you an interesting commuter motorcycle comparison story. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive.